Hi, I'm Jackie Hardy with NDG Live. Thank you for joining us as today we will be speaking with Mr. Moses Aito. He is the Diversity Business Director with North Texas Tollway Authority. We are speaking with him specifically about the recent study that was done by the MGT Consulting Group in which they hired to assess their MWBE program, their availability and disparity study. So we wanted to speak with them and give them an opportunity to share with us and our listeners about what they are doing to hopefully continue to close the disparity gap among MWBEs. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Thank you. So thank you so much, Mr. Moses Aito, for joining us, North Dallas Gazette Live, our digital channel. We really appreciate it, and we'll get right into it. So as you know, we reached out to North Texas Toll Authority with respect to the recent, and I say recent, I believe it was in 2020, the MGT availability and disparity study that was done. But before we kind of speak specifically to that, I'd appreciate if you would just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, explain kind of your background, especially as it relates to your experiences with diversity and inclusion and kind of what your title is there at NTTA.
All right, thank you, Jackie, and the North Dallas Gazette for having me on this call. My name again is Moses Aito. I'm the Director of Business Diversity here at NTTA, the North Texas Tollway Authority. So I started my journey in the diversity space over 12 years ago, officially.
Wow.
That was when I started with the city of Dallas. So I got exposed to outreach and diversity at the city of Dallas before I transitioned to Parkland Hospital to support the construction of the new Parkland project, the new Parkland campus. From there, I became their Director of Inclusion and Supplier Diversity, which I did until I transitioned to the North Texas Tollway Authority a little over 3 years ago. Now, with my background in architecture and construction, so I would say unofficially, I've been in the diversity and inclusion space for over 2 decades.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So yeah, a lot of experience, both sounds like on the public and private sector.
Correct.
Yeah. And kind of jumping into the study, you know, I will read to you just kind of a portion that love for you to kind of give your response to. And it stated in the study that NTTA's attention to diversity in contracting MGT found statistical evidence of a disparity between the number of available MWBEs in NTTA's geographic marketplace, providing the goods or services procured by NTTA availability and the amount of money paid to MWBEs that are actually working with NTTA as a prime contractors or subcontractors utilization. Further, the study found evidence of race and gender disparities in the private industry and NTTA's marketplace, suggesting that disparities may increase if NTTA was to discontinue setting MWBE goals for its projects. And so kind of with that, can you respond to what are your goals? Of course, you know, this study is certainly in place to show that there is a need for an MWBE program. So can you kind of expound on what your goals are?
Thank you, Jackie. So when you listen to the last part of that statement, he said that the study found evidence of disparity in the private industry in NTTA's marketplace, suggesting that if NTTA is not doing what we do now, that would be compounded issues. So right there, we recognize that NTTA is doing something right.
Yeah. And
we are making an impact in the diversity space, which is great. Unfortunately, disparities exist all over in the space of availability and utilization, not just in the Dallas Metroplex, but nationally, we have that issue. But we are excited that NTTA is having an impact in the diversity community. A couple of things. We have always established goal-setting process here at NTTA. And what has that done for us? That has opened up the opportunities for minority vendors to compete for work at NTTA. It's not something we just started. We've done it for over 12 years. Others are just trying to catch up with NTTA. So we have been at the forefront of trying to do this. Why do we do that? Because we are in the heavy highway industry, which is a little different from your regular building construction. So we have to go all out to do outreach, to educate people about the intricacy and the technicality of this business. It's not your regular building. So we have to bring people in, we have to train them, we have to expose them to opportunity and keep them busy so that they can provide us with utilization. And I'm glad to let you know that over the past 11, 12 years, we have grown our spending from 17% to 31% on an annual basis. Now, in 2016, we did achieve 40%, meaning for every dollar that NTTA spent, we spent 40 cents with a disadvantaged minority or woman business enterprise, which is great. Now you say, well, so what has happened since then? In 2019, we achieved 36%. Now in the world of COVID in 2020, where there was a lockdown, people were not working, construction shut down, we were still able to achieve 31% of our spend. So it means we are doing certain things right. Now, the numbers vary, not because we chose not to do what we do, but the mix of our projects drive how we utilize people. Now, coming back to the study, we at NTTA, we commissioned the project, the study. And why did we do that? We wanted to identify if the program we have has been effective in closing the gap. And the data suggests that it is working. And the study also gave us two compelling observations. That number one, because there is disparity, so we have legal authority to have a program. But if there's no disparity, then we have to shut down the program. So it tells us we have the legal disparity, the legal authority, which is great. So we can continue to support our minority communities. It also tells us that we are doing something right because the data provides the evidence. So it shows our systems, our programs are effective, and we should continue to do that.
Sure. And speaking of the data, I know, as you know, we are an African-American owned and operated newspaper. So we're specifically interested of that data, how much of that business is being certainly utilized in the African-American community as far as contractors, Black contractors. Can you kind of expound on that? Like how much is going to Black-owned businesses or contractors who work in the construction arena, reconstruction arena? Can you kind of speak to some specific data on that?
Yeah, thank you for that comment. Now, I don't have the specific data in front of me, and I can always share that with you post this meeting.
Yes,
however, however, we utilize a lot of African Americans on our projects. Now, when you look at what we buy 4 categories of activity. We buy construction. So when you talk about construction, we have a little bit, just a tiny little bit of vertical, mostly interior finish out. But most of our construction is heavy highway. We have professional services, meaning engineers who do work for us. We have consulting work, and we have your regular goods and services. What I can tell you is this: the bulk of our professional services is done and handled by African Americans. We have a lot of African Americans providing goods and services for NTTA as well as consulting. We have a good representation in construction, but we would like to do more.
Sure. Well, we would appreciate those numbers. Yeah, if you could, just so that we can tangibilize it to our audience, what that looks like and that breakdown with respect to African Americans. Yeah,
understandably, we have had great success with the African American community in terms of consulting, professional services, and goods. Now, because we're on this platform, I just need to make an appeal. We need more help when it comes to the construction side, because a lot of folks are in the building side, but we need them to transition to the heavy highway.
Sure. And you mentioned outreach is certainly one of your goals. Can you kind of expound on that? What are some of those outreach? I know you have the roads program that you also do, which is kind of a mentoring program. Can you kind of expound on a little in more detail what outreach looks like practically, and then maybe talk about the roads program?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Sure.
NTTA has, over time, we have developed some great outreach programs to drive our diversity effort. And our outreach programs have been recognized as best in class, as sometimes best practice in the diversity industry. So when you look at outreach, we have different segments of outreach. So I'm going to take a few minutes just to explain so everybody understands what we do. So when we do outreach, we are creating awareness of contracting opportunities at NTTA. So we partner with a lot of our advocacy partners, from the minority chambers of commerce, like the Black contractors, to the Dallas Black Chamber of Commerce, to the National Association of Minority Contractors, to the Greater Southwest Black Chamber of Commerce, to the Dallas Black Chamber, to the Forward Metropolitan Black Chamber of Commerce, Denton Black Chamber of Commerce, Collin County. So we work with everybody, because we cannot do it in silo. We got to work with the community stakeholders. So we do all this, and we deploy different level of outreach. Number one, we have our signature program called Business Chat. That happens every second Wednesday of the month, like clockwork. It happens. And what do? We bring all our stakeholders onto just one platform to have a conversation. We bring on NTTA business units. We bring on our diversity vendors. We bring on our own prime vendors who have worked with us. We make sure they connect with our vendors out there. We bring on our chambers of commerce and the contractor associations, and anybody who has any interest. We all come in and we talk about how to build relationship. We talk about how to work together as a unit. We talk about how to share the work, and we discuss upcoming opportunities. So everybody has an advantage and access to what is coming down the pipeline. Now that happens every month like clockwork. Now on a quarterly basis, we go out, we take that outreach into the community. We call it the Vendor Outreach Symposium. That goes out every quarter to our member counties. Now in 2020, something happened. It's called COVID. COVID kind of changed the dynamics about what we do and how we do stuff. So, but at NTTA, we quickly pivot to virtual environment. Now we didn't do virtual environment like everybody else. We gave it a little twist to make it workable for everybody. So what we do is we created breakout sessions with our virtual environment. Because we understand in a typical virtual environment, everybody have a conversation and then you move on. That's what we want.
So this virtual environment, is that available through your like different platforms? Like
we use Microsoft Teams. Yeah, through Microsoft Teams, you log on, you connect with everybody. See, the breakout session allows individual DMWBEs to have a one-on-one conversation with our business unit to talk about projects coming down the pipeline. So you are aware of what it is and you know how to engage. And we also partner with our advocacy partners. Like I said, they have events that happen throughout the year. We are part of the events. We are out there to connect with their members, to talk about opportunities, talk about how to do business with NTTA. Besides that, we also do something that is dear to me. They are called targeted outreach events. And they could be project-driven.
Wait, say that again, I'm sorry.
Targeted outreach events. They are events targeted at specific opportunities. All right? Now they could be project-driven or need-based. So let me explain it too. Project-driven. When we have specific and unique projects, oftentimes we will do an outreach based solely on that, just
Right.
to drive utilization and participation. Good example would be when we build a roadway. Typically, unless we have to extend or widen the roadway, it's a one and done. You build it,
Right.
you're done.
Sure. It's not recurring services.
Yeah. But what is recurring is the maintenance of that roadway.
Right.
The maintenance.
Sure.
So let's look at President George Bush Turnpike. It's about 52 miles long. Each traffic light direction is 4 lane.
Right.
So go is 4 lane, coming back is 4 lane. So you're looking 8 lanes times 52. That's over 400 lane miles. That's a lot of lane. So what we did was to maintain the roadway. We did an event in 2019. Trying to drum up the contract for the maintenance. What we did was we reached out nationally, looking for anybody and everybody as a prime who was going to bid on that job. And we put it out there: to bid on this, you must attend an outreach event to connect with all the local WBEs in the market space, so you can engage with them and use them on the project. Okay. We partnered again with the community, the Black Chamber of Commerce, the Black contractors, the Asian, the Hispanic, everybody. We even went as far as connecting with some of our entities: City of Dallas, City of Fort Worth, Dallas Law Field, DFW Airport. They were part of that platform just to make sure there was inclusion. And then we hosted the event at the Goodwill on Westmoreland. And we had over 200 people show up. It was great. We had some great feedback and great inclusion.
Oh, have you seen some success stories as a result?
Oh yeah. We had a lot of engagement on the contract. Can
you give us an example of one? Yeah, where that relationship was certainly made, and as a result, it materialized in a procurement opportunity. Is there any kind of example of that?
Let me give you a good example. So in one of our outreach events with the National Association of Minority Contractors, we met a Black female who provides traffic control. And you know, traffic control is a male-dominated sector. Sure. Black female. Yeah. We worked with this entity. We brought them over to NTTA. They went through the onboarding, registered as a vendor. They went through our outreach. We connected them with the stakeholders and our business units, and they were able to secure a subcontract. That subcontract grew and enabled them to build capacity. And when the opportunity came up, they were able to bid as a prime vendor, and they were awarded a multi-million-dollar contract to provide traffic control for the NTTA. Okay. And is that business local to the DFW area? Absolutely, yes. They are right here in Dallas Metroplex. Okay, yes. Awesome. Yeah. Yes. Not only that, during our business chart, we have Black-owned businesses who have secured contracts, even with national engineering firms, right from our business chart. Now, one of the things we've also done in terms of targeted outreach event is need-based. So when you look at availability and utilization, I'm gonna use one, which is striping. So every time you drive on your roadway, you see those lines, those are striping. Right. There's a lot of availability because of parking lots and parking garages. That happens all the time. But when it comes to heavy highway, we don't see a whole lot of utilization because a lot of people will prefer to do parking lot, which is easy. You paint and you're done. But when it comes to highway, you are using a more technical product and process. So we have not seen the utilization that we want. So what did we do? NTTA proactively reached out to the community again. We partnered with DFW Airport, Dallas Law Field, TexDOT, with Black contractors, Asian contractors, National Association of Minority Contractors, NAMAC. And we organized this event. As a matter of fact, the chairman of the planning committee happened to be Jeff Postel, a Black male running his own construction company here in Dallas, who is also the chairman of NAMAC. We were able to pull it together just 2 weeks ago. We had great response from the community, and we're hoping something great will come out of it.
Sure.
Now, you did mention road, so let's talk about road. That is our signature capacity building program. Road has been in place for a little over 10 years. And what it does is to connect established prime contractors with emerging WBE firms to connect together on a 2-year cycle and partner together to grow capacity. Again, when you look at road, it is relationship and opportunities advancing diversity, meaning we build relationships that translate into opportunities and then grow diversity. That is what we have done. And by March of 2022, 130 firms here in DFW will have gone through that program and graduated. 65 of those are WBEs. The program has enabled WBEs to grow capacity and to take on work at NTTA as subcontractors and prime contractors, not just at NTTA, but at other entities in the North Texas area.
Okay, sure. And I know you mentioned a lot of the partnerships that you work with to certainly increase your database, if you will, of hiring or looking at potential minority-owned contractors. And one that I know is a very established organization is the Regional Black Contractors Association. Do you work at all with them? And, yes.
As a matter of fact, I have a relationship with Mr. John Proctor that dates back to my days at Parkland Hospital.
Okay.
So I've had a good relationship with RBCA, and we still work with RBCA with Mr. John Proctor and of course with King Shaw, their president. They are a staple at our monthly business chart.
Okay.
They are a part of what we do.
Yes.
We work with them and they work with us to make sure we have access to the Black communities and we can engage together to make sure the awareness is there.
Right. Yes. Because I know a lot of Black-owned businesses certainly work with them. They are there for them, of course, to be a hit for them. And so, yeah, I was just interested in seeing that relationship because a lot of what you're speaking of, I'm sure they can be that mouthpiece as well to, African-American businesses that they serve to ensure that they are aware of some of the things that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we work closely with them. As a matter of fact, our road program, because on a 2-year cycle.
Okay.
So the application process for the next class is on the street, just closed yesterday. So part of what we did was to work with the RBCA to make sure they inform their membership about this mentorship opportunity. That is part of how we connect and we relate. We are part of the outreach event that they host. They are part of our own outreach event. So we have this mutually beneficial relationship that is focusing on growing the African-American community.
Sure. Yeah. And I know with respect to your roads program and that kind of mentoring program that you offer, what do you have in place to ensure that the goals that you've set with respect to that program and some of the other goals that you mentioned, what accountability measures do you have in place? So if those goals aren't met, how are you addressing that and tackling those head on? Because granted, goals are always great on paper, right? But when you accomplish those goals, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So can you kind of explain when you guys are missing the mark, what accountability efforts do you have in place to ensure that we don't, this doesn't become a trend, if you will?
So let me be sure. Are we talking about the roads program or the program overall?
Well, the overall program.
Okay.
I apologize. Yes, sir. The overall program I know there are different things that make up that program. So I'm sure you have individual goals even within those sub.
So let me break them into little chunks. Let's start with the road program. So with the road program is a voluntary partnership between a mentor and a mentee. However, we make sure they execute an agreement And as part of that agreement, they have a development plan that the prodigy or mentee will submit and say, in the next 2 years, this is what I want to accomplish. We have sat down with the mentor. Both of us have agreed to do this. And everything is documented. And it has milestones for them to accomplish each one. And every quarter, they have to report back to us. This is where we are at. We said we will do this. We accomplished it. We did not. Here's why. Every once in a year, they have to report to the Business Diversity Advisory Council, a committee comprised of community and business leaders from North Texas who have oversight over the road program. And so they have to report back to the community and say, this is what we're doing. And so we measure all that to be sure that the program is doing what it's supposed to do. Now to the overall program. We work collaboratively with our procurement team to make sure we are part of the procurement process at the very beginning. We are part of what they call the planning meeting. At that meeting, we look at the project. We look at the scope. We make sure the scope is not restrictive. We make sure we have divisible work so that subcontractors can be part of the project. We look at availability to be sure we have people out there who can work on this job. And part of what we do proactively, even before the job is on the street, we notify the diversity community. This job is coming down the pipeline. You all need to be ready so you all can be a part of this. We also leverage the business BDAC, that's the Business Diversity Advisory Council, since they are part of the community, to help us push out that messaging as well. With all that said, once we assign a goal, every prime contractor who gets a job at NTTA must submit a subcontractor utilization plan. And that tells us, I'm going to use this vendor for this work, and this is how much I'm going to pay them. And every month, they have to report into our system. We do have a compliance. You know, there's a saying, you can do all outreach, you can do all advocacy. Right. If there's no compliance, it means nothing. Exactly. So we do have a compliance component as part of the diversity program, and they monitor all contracts to hold the prime vendors accountable to fulfill their commitment to utilize DMWBEs on the job and meet or exceed the goal assigned for each and every contract.
So those good faith efforts, that is something that you are oversighting and making sure, right, that these prime contractors are utilizing every, if you will, resource to certainly utilize these minority and women business-owned businesses. Specifically, too, we're speaking about African-American businesses, because I know, if I can be honest with you, Mr. Aito, is that there has been at times, I think, a feeling of cronyism, particularly with the prime contractors, where, you know, that good old boy network, you bring in your people that you know. And so how is the oversight being, if you will, intact to ensure that those good faith efforts are being exercised to its optimal, you know, rate, if you will?
Thank you for that. At NTTA, we do have the good faith effort as part of our program. But with that being said, good faith effort is something we do far and infrequently. It's not something that happens frequently here at NTTA. Why? Because we make sure we hold the prime vendors accountable to meet the goal. So once we assign a goal, a prime vendor has to submit, like I said, a subcontracting plan of how to meet the goal. Now, if they demonstrate that they did everything and they still cannot meet the goal, or they could not secure enough participation to meet the goal, a lot of things has to happen. Then the good faith effort process will come in, and they have to document and demonstrate that they did everything under the sun to meet the goal, but they just could not. They have to convince us that they did everything that was required. Now,
has there been situations where you've stepped in and said, we don't?
I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get there. Now you're getting me excited. I'm gonna get there. You know, because they submit a good faith effort does not, again, repeat, it does not preclude or relieve them from the responsibility to still meet the goal. It doesn't relieve them of that responsibility, because we expect that for the life of the contract, they are constantly looking for how to utilize the WBEs. And because we engage with them monthly and quarterly, we do have this dialogue. So we are always on top of them to make sure, what are you doing to meet the goal? Right. Now, to submit a GFE form or process that is acceptable, there's a lot of things that have to happen. Number one, the prime has to convince us that, number one, they created divisible work from the scope so that they could have subcontracting opportunity. They have to show us evidence that they attended the pre-bid meetings. For DMWBEs, we attend pre-bid meetings to clarify questions as well as to network and connect with primes. So they have to show us evidence that we're there. They have to show us evidence that they assessed our compliance system to connect with all the available DMWBEs in the market space who could provide service for them. And if they don't have access, that they reached out to NTTA, and we gave them a list of available vendors based on the scope that they're looking for. They have to do all that. They have to show us evidence that they worked with the community, the contractor associations, the minority chambers of commerce, and the certification agencies to create awareness or do outreach or assess their membership. They got to do all that. Failure to do one,
and that's comprehensive.
Yeah, failure to do one of those is a deficiency. So we had a vendor who secured a major project with NTTA, and then they didn't meet the goal, and they submitted a binder to justify their good faith effort. It was yay big, yay big. We sat down for 2 weeks. We combed every single data they submitted, and we realized they had a deficiency. And we set up a come to Jesus meeting. And we told them, for you all to come for this meeting, you need to bring people with authority to make decisions on behalf of the organization. So they actually came with the company president, and we sat down, we laid it all out. Here are your deficiencies. What do we need to do? And then they went back, they retooled, they did everything they had to do, and guess what? They were able to meet the goal. So all those happen to make sure we protect the interests of not just NTTA, but our DMWBE community, to make sure there's fairness.
Sure. And how often would you say are you having to have those kind of, as you put it, come to Jesus?
Well, because everybody is afraid of the come to Jesus meetings. So they have to make sure they do it right the very first time. Yes.
Okay, so there's a precedence, you're saying, with the prime contractors that you must do your due diligence if you're going to submit this good faith efforts. Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Waiver. And my other question to you too, Mr. Aito, is there a meeting that you have with those contractors who did not get the bid so that they can kind of learn what missteps or what are things that kind of prevented them from winning that bid? Is there a program that you have established to help with that as well?
Yes, and I'm going to use your platform to do a quick public service announcement as well regarding that program. We have a debrief program. Right. So if you bid on a job, on a contract, and you were not the winning bidder, we have a debrief where we bring you in and we walk you through the outcome, so you know how to be prepared for the next go round. Gotcha. Yes, we do all that all day long with any bidder who wants to do that with NTTA. Now, here's my PSA announcement. Oftentimes, the winning bidders don't come for a debrief. I believe they should, Because unless you know what made you win the project, then you don't know how to be ready for the next go round. So we encourage everyone, you win the bid, you don't win the bid, let's do a debrief. So you know what is well and where you have deficiencies that you can improve upon.
Sure. And, you know, there are challenges that are unique to minority contractors that, quite honestly, their counterparts aren't experiencing. One of them is the bonding process, right? Can you kind of expound on, are there things that your organization, NTTA, is willing to do or have programs in place where applicable, you know, and certainly that you can possibly waive or modify the bonding requirements or the scope of work, you know, with that in as far as making it conducive to maybe a smaller business and handle the broader scope of work? Are there things that you guys try to do to help smaller, certainly minority businesses that just don't have maybe the financial resources or manpower?
Thank you so much. And again, part of what we do as business diversity, like I said, we are at the forefront of the procurement process. So we are, once we get into that planning meetings, we are looking at the scope. And part of what we're trying to do is to establish divisible work. Can we unbundle the scope so that smaller firms can bid on those? Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, understanding we're in the heavy highway space. But whenever we can, we unbundle the scopes and we put out smaller projects so that everybody have the resource to bid on those smaller projects. You'll be surprised. A lot of people assume that at NTTA, everything has to be tens and millions of dollars. We have contracts out there for $50,000. We have contracts for $25,000. We have for $100,000, $200,000, because we've been able to unbundle the scopes so that WBEs can compete on that. Now, in terms of bonding, here is the kicker. The state of Texas has designated heavy highway as a public service. And because it's public service, there is a limitation to what we can do in terms of bonding.
Sure.
Because number one, to protect the people and the delivery of infrastructure safely in North Texas.
Right.
Yeah, we have very little wiggle room in terms of bonding, waivers, or adjustment. But failure for us to comply and maintain bonding on our projects, number one, is a violation of the law.
Yes.
Number two, it creates unsafe environment, which is not what we want for NTTA, for the community, as well as the WBEs. Because we do heavy highway that is public service. It's a little different from your vertical buildings.
Right, right. Yes, understandably, there's regulations I know that you have to comply with, but certainly on the goods and services side, would you say there is some possibly more leadway that you have with respect to helping give certainly smaller MWBEs or minority-owned businesses a better seat at the table that they quite honestly couldn't be able to compete with a larger firm? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
In terms of bonding mostly we apply to construction projects.
Yes.
But when you get into goods and services,
you have more wiggle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so again, it goes back to us trying to unbundle the scope.
Sure.
Once we unbundle, it creates a level playing field for everybody else to come in and compete. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know there is always just with respect to small businesses, they are, or I should say minority owned and operated businesses financially, you know, just having the resources to do these jobs. You know, there was a report with, I think WFAA reported that it was a report last year that there were certainly about 20% of banks in the Dallas County that were not lending to, as far as residents, more residential, but in the that were neighborhoods below Interstate 30. And so a lot of, minority-owned, African-American-owned businesses are in that area. And so their hands are tied when they can't get the loans to be able to substantiate, their business to be able to even offer a bid. And so are there different, as far as I know, credit or creative financing methods that you'll offer to some of, particularly our Black-owned contractors?
So thank you for that feedback. As a political subdivision of the state of Texas, we are precluded from offering credit or financing project by state law. However, this issue of financing and credit is something that the banking community and the federal government, including state, local, county, have to figure out a way to make it work for the minority-owned businesses. But here at NTTA, understanding our limitations, we have been a little creative. What we have done is to have partnerships with preferred lenders who are under the Small Business Administration portfolio. So when we identify vendors, minority vendors who need support, we've been able to connect them with financial programs providers, such as Lift Fund, People Fund. We connect them with the Goldman Sachs 10,000, coordinated by Dallas County Community College. But beyond that, we have this strategic partnership with the Small Business Administration, which is a federal government program, to make sure they provide capacity building, training, and access to loans and funding to any vendor that so desire. Now, we don't provide it, they do. So what we have done is to make SBA a staple part of our outreach program. So whenever you see NTTA doing an outreach, guess what? SBA is there with us to make sure once we identify a need, we transition over to them. We do know that not all size fit all. So what we have also done is to work with the conventional lenders. We have been able to work with Chase Bank as well as First Citizens Bank. They have small business program targeted at minority vendors, and we have been able to make them a part of our outreach as well. So that if you don't want to go the SBA route, you can go the conventional lending. That's second part. The third part of it all is we have also looked at the non-traditional. So what we have done is to also partner with providers of equipment who work directly with the manufacturer. They are non-traditional. So all these vendors attend our outreach. So if there's a need, we can connect them with the requesting vendor, and they talk about how to do financing, lease financing, direct purchase. But again, the financing structure is more workable and convenient for a WBE firm. Now, for those who want to buy materials and they're having cash flow issues, we also have vendors who support those kind of material purchase. They are part of our outreach program. So they work with them to help them do cash flow, and then they buy materials and they establish flexible payment plan so that it does not impact their cash flow.
Absolutely, that's good to know. And even on the billing side with respect to paying those contractors, your prime contractors, is there an oversight there in making sure that payment is made and that they are receiving those payments? Because a lot of those minority-owned businesses are relying on those funds. Absolutely.
Knowing fully well that NTTA does not receive any type of taxation, funding to do our project. So we are self-funded. So we have a vested interest to make sure our prime contractors are paid on time, and they in turn pay their subs on time, because if there's any gap in that payment process, it will impact our projects. So
Sure.
part of what we do to make sure our subcontractors are paid, again, we have our compliance program. I keep going back to compliance. It's all about compliance.
Right.
And we do have a system that tracks every single spend. Once we pay the prime, we receive the notice in our system, and the prime have X number of days to pay their subcontractors.
Okay.
Failure to do that, the system will flag them. And so we know there's an issue. And the good news is everybody knows if there's a gap in the process, it will affect their project. So everybody make sure they pay on time. So we have a way to track the spend.
Okay.
With all the WBE firms.
Sure. So it sounds like you have a process in place to ensure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so my last question is, how can I think if someone's listening to this that is as a minority business owner, how can they get in contact, or if they certainly have grievances that they haven't felt heard, where would they go? Would it be with you, Mr. Aito?
As the director of business diversity, my job is to ensure the inclusion of DNWBEs in every aspect of NTTA's contracting and procurement process. So if they have anything to talk about how to do business with NTTA, guess what? I always tell people at NTTA, we are open for business. Please reach out to me by email, by phone. You can attend our outreach events. My job is to work with you and make sure we take care of you.
Sure, we'll add your email. If you could send that to me, because I have been dealing with,
So what I would do is I have a team that works with me.
Okay.
So what I don't want is for you to send me an email and I'm out of the office and you're like, oh, gee, it didn't respond.
Yeah.
But we have a group email that anybody in my team can access. So if you send us an email, someone will always get back to you.
And what is that email?
It's the business diversity at NTTA.org. That's simple.
Okay.
Business diversity at NTTA.org.
And would it be safe you try to get back within a 24-hour or 48 hours?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. Well, I guess my last thing, you mentioned you made a public service announcement to our viewers. And my question to you, do you guys utilize the minority as far as with respect to when you're advertising your bids? Are you publicizing those in certain places or I know you have all these different programs, outreach programs, but do you advertise when there are big projects? And if so, where?
We have some advertising platform, which is done through our public affairs.
Yes.
So if you need more details, you probably need to reach out
to
public affairs.
So our listeners can know.
Okay, but as part of how to do business with NTTA, some years ago, we implemented an online platform, our supplier portal called NTTA Marketplace. So if you go to nttamarketplace.org, a couple of things will happen. You can register as a vendor, because for you to do business with NTTA, you need to register as a vendor. That way, once you register and you tell us the kind of service offerings that you have, if we have any procurement that aligns with those, the system will notify you electronically, so you know something is out there. That's number one. Number two, from that same system, you have access to what we call a procurement forecast. And that gives you a forecast of what is coming down the pipeline as far as 12 months out. So it allows you to have a preview of what is coming down the pipeline, so you can strategize and plan. What do you want to pursue? Who do you want to work with? Do I need to be as a prime or a sub? Do I need to be on a team? It helps you strategize to do all that. So we do have that in place. Not only that, the supplier portal also allows you a platform to engage and see who is out there. We call it the bidders list. So if a prime has shown an interest in a project, you will be able to identify who they are, and you can engage with them and offer your services to them. So the NTTA Marketplace is a great tool,
resource,
to support access to opportunity. Most importantly, it makes sure that we are fair and we are transparent in our procurement process.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your time with us, Mr. Aito. I think a lot of people will find this helpful, and I appreciate too if you could send some of that data that we referenced,
Okay.
or yeah, particularly with African American contractors, and of that, I think you said 39% what was awarded to African American contractors. With some of the data that you shared earlier. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just be a little more clear here. I'm not sure if I gave an actual percentage, but I did mention our attainment on a yearly basis. Okay,
Right.
now for the data, what I would ask that you do for me is if you could put in a PIA request, open records request, requesting what you need. Then we can gather it for you.
Absolutely.
And then we can transmit it to you.
Absolutely, I will. And send it to the email that you referenced.
If you send it to me, then we will forward it to the applicable office to help you out.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate your time with us and answering our questions. Thank you again for tuning in and watching what we hope was an enlightening and informative discussion with Mr. Moses Aito. We also hope that you will join us again as we continue this conversation about MWBEs and closing the disparity gap. So we hope to see you next time. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.